Hello, Steve White, TrekBoy89 for SteveArts89. This is my third attempt at doing a review of this episode, but I'm only going to post one and I'm going to try and make it short. Like most Star Trek fans, I'm sure when you saw the name of this episode, you were concerned. Star Trek Discovery, Season 3, Episode 7, Unification Part 3. Now, Unification Part 2, 1 and 2, was a two-part episode of Next Generation, which Leonard Nimoy appeared in. It was basically his attempt to unify, sort of focus on his attempt to unify the Romulans and the Vulcans, which was basically what he committed his life to in his later decades. And they never really answered this in the other universe, in the original Star Trek universe. We never really found out if he achieved it or not. We just knew that he had committed his life to that and he was on Romulan, basically trying to get the Romulans to, and the Vulcans to communicate. And, So I was really worried that they would destroy his legacy. I was worried that they would establish that he failed, the Romulans and the Vulcans were still enemies, they didn't unify, and that basically Michael was going to walk in and resolve it all in one episode and basically undermine his whole life by fixing this problem that he had spent his whole life trying to resolve. So that was the main concern when this episode started. And the episode starts off with Michael talking to herself, doing a log, basically saying, I don't know where I fit in. I don't know if I'm meant to be here. And considering that she hates the chain of command and doesn't respect it and just wants to do her own thing because she thinks she knows best and she should just be running her own little dictatorship, it makes sense that she doesn't really fit in there and she would question this. Now she goes to speak to Tilly because they've been analysing the data from the black box from the last episode, and Tilly tells her off because she put Tilly in a really bad position with Saru by running off and just her being selfish and doing her Michael thing. It was nice seeing her be told off and dressed down like in the last episode because she's just been running wild and having no consequences to anything, and it's just nice to see that character get slapped down a bit because obviously at some point the writers looked at it or listened to the fans and said, wow, yeah, she's out of control, we need to do something. So they work out that indeed the burn did originate from a certain place because there is time differences between the free ships that they got the black boxes from that were destroyed. And somehow they get on, I don't remember how this happened, somehow they get onto Vulcan. They're talking about Vulcan because I guess they go to the Admiral, that's right, they had the scene with the Admiral, and he basically says, well, it's all about Vulcan. Vulcan, which has been renamed Navarre, they've reunited with the Romulans basically, and they were working on a warp drive system that didn't run on dilithium, and there was a lot of politics involved. So we do find out that Spock did indeed. He achieved eventually. It took time after he died or disappeared, but he did manage to reunify the Romulans and the Vulcans, and now the Romulans live on Vulcan. And I was so relieved. I literally grabbed my Spock. Who lives next to my computer. He's I love him. He's he unfortunately is the Spock from the movies, the toys from the first movie, the one that had a movie line, that had merchandise. Now Leonard Nimoy, so I love it because it's Leonard Nimoy, but and it's the last time we saw him portray a Spock. But I learned later, of course, it's not the actual character he thought he was playing. He was tricked into thinking he was playing Spock from the original series in the movies that had travelled through time and universes, when it actually was one from a different universe. There's at least 3 universes, and it's a different one. So it's not really Spock, it's JJ Spock, it's Prime Universe Spock, which is, they tried to sell this new universe called the Prime Universe as just a name for the original series universe, when it actually was a different universe. So, but he thought he was playing Spock. So I don't know how to deal with it, but I just love it because it's Leonard Nimoy and it's his image, and he lives next to my computer watching over me because I love Star Trek and he's one of my favourite characters. So he's beloved even though there's so many issues. He's problematic now, but I love him anyway. So I was so relieved they didn't destroy his legacy, even though they did have to point out that he wouldn't be who he was if Michael hadn't made him the man he was. He still was able to achieve great things. So they undermined him, but they still allowed him to have his legacy on some level. So I was really relieved, and I literally like hugged him for like a couple of seconds. Like they let you have it. They let you have your legacy. They didn't destroy you. They didn't destroy it because they'd already done it. So it's kind of okay that he achieved great things because ultimately a woman is responsible for it, and Michael Burnham is responsible for it. So you take your victories where you can get them. So they basically want to go to Romulan. I keep saying Romulan, Romulus. They want to go to Vulcan and they want to get all their information about what happened, because all of a sudden they seem to know that the burn originated from the the Vulcan experiments with this new warp technology, or this new power system for the warp technology. They don't really go into detail, so it's kind of hard to work out exactly what happened. I don't know if it's supposed to be a mystery or if it's poorly written, but it's really not well explained. I couldn't really work out a lot of the elements in this episode. And me trying to rationalize it is why my other videos went so long, and why I'm redoing it again, and why I'm a bit hoarse. Forgive me. I've got a very dry throat. Okay, so they go there and they're like, no, we're not sharing anything with you. We do not trust the Federation, because the Federation was so overextending itself that it was putting all this pressure on its member worlds, and while they're trying to do big things for the whole Federation, they really hurt all the small individual worlds, and pushing us to experiment with this technology, we believe, caused the burn, and it's all your fault. It's all our fault and all your fault. So they don't trust the Federation at all. So Michael Spock, of course, because she knows all about Vulcan, because she went to the Science Academy, she basically challenges them with some science challenge where they have to address it. They basically, and this episode is so cheap. It's so cheap. We don't see Vulcan. We don't go to Vulcan. They basically hold all this on. It should have been held on the planet. They hold this on the ship in the conference room. All they do is bring some tiki torches on to look Vulcan, and I think they may put some red carpet down, and that's it. We don't even see star fields outside the windows. They just shine a light inside to blow it out, so you don't actually see anything, and that's it. So cheap. Whatever they're spending on these episodes now, it's not showing. So she challenges them, and I forgot another important thing because it's so forgettable. Basically, her mother shows up because they say, well, you need a representative. So her mother shows up, and she's now a member of the Colat Malat, which was the sisterhood that they established in Picard, who are dedicated to absolute candor and honesty. She brings her on, and she comes on the ship, and Michael's like, oh my God, how are you here? What happened? Blah, blah, blah. And then they brush over it really quick. She's like, I just somehow ended up on Vulcan, and I became one of these people because reasons. She's not a Vulcan, she's not a Romulan, but yet she's a member of a Romulan sisterhood. Now, Michael, because she's technically the daughter of Sarek, even though she's just adopted, and the sister of Spock, even though she's just adopted, no disrespect to adopted people, but she's a different race. So how she manages to, like, they use her name to try and get their foot in the door to speak to the Vulcans, because the Vulcans don't want to speak to them, and there's a lot of drama. And basically her mother, after talking to her and seeing that she is insecure and doesn't know what she's doing, and she's just committed another act of subordination and mutiny, basically, she reads her for filth in front of everyone in the middle of this whole challenge. and appeal to get this knowledge from this data and information from the Romulan Vulcan community or whatever. So she basically says this woman cannot be trusted. She doesn't even trust herself. She's not being honest with us. She's not being honest with you. She's not honest with herself. She's a train wreck, and she just backs that bus she's thrown her under over and over, and it's pretty unbelievable. And Michael just does this to her the whole time, like it's just really bad. Eventually she's honest, and she says, look, I need this, we need to do this, I need your help, can't do it without you. The Romulans eventually say, look, we are sick of the Vulcans holding everything back because of their fear of progress or anything, their cultural issues, because they've got this really delicate balance that they're sort of living under, which is why part of the reason why the Romulans and the Vulcans didn't want to deal with the Federation again, because they didn't want to have a debate like this, you know, bring up all their issues and that. So they say, look, we're going to give it to you. And she says, look, I do not want to split you guys. I do not want to ruin your culture, what you've achieved here. I'm just going to withdraw my complaint, and I'm just going to give you my information that I have and my information that I get. I'm going to trust you to work this out, and I'm not going to, you know, press you to involve me. And then she leaves. And the Vulcan president, because I forgot to mention, of course, we have a female president because, of course, Vulcan has to be a matriarchy, or Navarre has to be a matriarchy, because in the future everything's a matriarchy, because the Federation is apparently some symbol of the patriarchy, and Star Trek is some symbol of the patriarchy and colonization. So it has to be destroyed and has to be remade as a minority matriarchy, which is what they've sort of done. And I'm not a misogynist, I don't care, I don't have any problem with women ruling, but I think it needs to be women and men ruling together, or with some sort of balance and equality. And so matriarchy is just as bad as a patriarchy as far as I'm concerned. So they haven't really resolved any issues by doing this, but that's something they keep pushing through all the cultures and all the series with the new Star Trek. It's always women in command, always women ruling. It's all matriarchal societies, and it's just really weird. So she basically decides, okay, we can trust Michael, so she gives him the data. So that's the end of that story. And we do see one more scene with Michael's mother where she basically says, look, I'm going to stay on Vulcan, but look, for the first time I can say you know where to find me. And they have this really horrible moment where they basically say how much of Spock became was a result of, you know, what his sister was. And again, they kind of undermine Spock on some level by basically saying he's only what he is because of you, because you're the greatest thing ever. Which really isn't Star Trek. Star Trek is about a family, it's about a group, it's about people working together, people's differences all coming together with unity to you know, resolve problems and to be a whole, or all the parts come together to become a whole. Whereas Discovery is all about Michael Burnham being the answer to everything. That's why it's not Star Trek, it doesn't work. But that's the A story done, basically. Now, the B story was Saru, and I don't think I mentioned this. I've done 3 videos already, so it's hard to remember what I've already talked about. Saru basically offers her to be the first officer. And she's like, I am an ensign. I have not gone through all the training. There are people on the ship with more experience than me that outrank me. How can I take command? She's very insecure. She doesn't know what to do. He says, think about it. She goes away. She, for some reason, asks Stamets, and being the bitchy queen he is, because apparently gays haven't evolved in 1,000 years or 300 years, he basically says, yeah, the idea of you giving me being in command, that is very disturbing to me. So she, of course, leaves. And she doesn't think she can do it. She doesn't think she can do it. She doesn't think the crew will accept her. She's struggling. She obviously wants to do it, but she's thinking what we're thinking. How can this person be the first officer? Now, we like Tilly. She's one of the few good characters on the show. There's only like 4 characters on the show, like Michael, Georgiou, Saru, and Michael. Tilly, they're the only sort of characters on the show. But her being in command, I don't know. But either way, Stamets tells the bridge extras, and they all get together, and they have this little say yes party where they all tell her to say yes. And she says, okay, because they're like, we'll follow you, we believe in you, we trust in you, you know. And she's like, okay, I will take it, I'll take the command. They all hug, they all cry. It's all very Discovery, not very Starfleet or Star Trek. And then Michael shows up late and is like, oh, did I miss the cool, you know, say yes part? And they're like, yeah. She's like, okay, well, here's the data, I got it. Let's work this out. So the next episode is all about that. So, yeah, I think I covered everything. The only other issue is Vulcan. Now, in the Prime Universe, which is the alternate timeline of the alternate JJ universe, which is not the same universe as the original Star Trek, different license, different everything, Vulcan was destroyed. In the Prime Universe, Romulus was destroyed. So in the same movie, they were both destroyed, basically. But supposedly different universes, different timelines, one exists, one doesn't. So this would imply that they're trying to suggest that Discovery is actually taking part in the original universe along with all the other series, because here we have Vulcan, it wasn't destroyed. But yet the Vulcan that we see is not called Vulcan, it's called Navarre. And it doesn't look like Vulcan. It's got a lot of green, it's got a lot of oceans. The original Vulcan just had one sort of big ocean. And although we don't see the planet's surface, towards the end we see the whole planet is green, and it's almost like it's enveloped in like a giant aurora borealis or something. It doesn't look like Vulcan. I have a bit of a theory that this is like Vulcan 2, that they named Navarre, and they basically took the Romulans on, and since it wasn't the original planet and they had this new society, that they have a new planet, basically a new name. That kind of works. I don't know what it's supposed to be, if this is just them doing Vulcan wrong, or if this is a different version of Vulcan and someone is trying to subversively say it's not the original universe because that's not Vulcan, although they're actually claiming that it is. So it's very hard. I couldn't work it out. And whether that's because they're trying to be mysterious, because they're poorly written, they're inconsistent, or Star Trek fans just, you know, want it to be stated that basically it's not the same universe. So I found it all very confusing, and like I said, this is my third attempt at doing this and keeping it under 20 minutes, which I'm just going to manage to do because this is the end. Yeah, so it was a kind of simple episode. The A story was pretty short, the B story was pretty short. The only real issues were, would they screw up Spock and his legacy in the future, because they ruined his past by making him just a product of Michael Burnham's wonderful amazingness. But they didn't screw up his legacy. I'm grateful. You take your victories where you can get them. There are a bunch of moments I was like, what the hell? How can like a very Discovery episode? But I'm just happy to just forget about them and let them go, because they didn't destroy Spock and his legacy. So, and they even showed Leonard Nimoy talking from footage from Unification, because apparently Michael never actually looked to see what happened with Spock. She never looked back to see the man he became. So she was glad to see that he actually achieved this. She was happy for him. She was proud of him. They got to show him for a few seconds talking about how Vulcan and Romulus need to reunite and everything. And it was kind of a nice moment, but it's still the whole issue of the universes and, you know, which Spock was he playing and all of that, and which Spock is that. You know, it's an issue, but I was happy to overlook it all just not have to deal with Spock's legacy being destroyed. So I'm just going to leave it there. Feel free to share, like, comment, subscribe, let me know what you think. I found a lot of it vague. I don't know if they're just trying to be mysterious as they build up the story, or if they're just doing their usual bad writing, or if I just can't focus on the episode and I'm missing information, missing bits. I'm really not sure. But I'm going to go before I hit 20 minutes. Feel free to share, like, comment, subscribe. Yep, that's it. I'm done. Before I know, it'll be episode 8.